Welcome back to Tales from the Shelf. Pitch Black, the first entry in the Riddick series. I was a little hesitant to talk about this one since the Riddick series is decently well known, but the more I thought about it, I realized people don't really discuss this first movie that much compared to the sequels or even the video games, which are honestly superior to the movies. Looking at everything that came after the first movie, I find it a little strange how this whole franchise even got started. Pitch Black is a decent, if somewhat formulaic sci-fi horror movie. So how did it evolve into a much larger sci-fi world? It's odd to look back at the whole thing. But I do think Pitch Black is the best movie in the series, while also being the most standalone. Vin Diesel stars as Riddick, an escaped convict and murderer who can see in the dark, being transported on a civilian spaceship that crash lands on a desert planet with 3 suns. The survivors band together to survive in this harsh environment and to defend themselves against Riddick, who escapes his chains pretty quickly. The crew quickly discovers that Riddick is the least of their worries, though, as the only other living things on the planet are a species of extremely hostile flesh-eating creatures that live underground. The creatures are actually harmed by light, so they can't come to the planet's surface since it's always daytime. But the survivors just so happened to conveniently land on this planet during an eclipse of all 3 suns. So now, with limited light and no trust in each other, they turn to Riddick to help them survive the monsters and escape this rock. During the daytime scenes, the lighting is extremely overexposed, which makes sense. But when the darkness sets in, it is, in fact, pitch black. Well, at first anyway. By the end of the film, the environment somehow becomes much more well lit. I don't know how that happened. I wish they would have kept it completely dark, but whatever. Some of the editing is really weird. There's a few shots that randomly invert the color, and also there's a number of scenes that are stretched and angled. It's hard to describe with just these still images that I use, but if you watch the movie, you'll quickly see what I mean. The alien creatures are mostly CGI, and while they're definitely dated, I wouldn't say they're bad. For the time, I bet these looked pretty good. Diesel may get top billing, and he is definitely the biggest actor in the movie, but I'd argue that the ship co-captain, Fry, is the real main character. Riddick himself doesn't have much of an on-screen presence for the first 20 or so minutes of the film, with Fry mostly being the one calling the shots. Riddick is mostly here to be the muscle. The characters, while mostly cliched, are somewhat likable enough to get a little invested. The cast does have a few highlights. Keith David is here, always great to see him, and also Claudia Black, who you might remember from Farscape, and as the voice of Chloe Frazer in Uncharted. Also, one of the characters is a girl with a shaved head named Jack. I can't help but wonder, did this movie have any influence on Mass Effect? As for Riddick himself, I think Diesel really nails it. Riddick is the definition of an anti-hero. Riddick is an extremely self-serving character who goes back and forth on doing good deeds. One minute he'll go back to save somebody in trouble, the next minute he won't think twice about screwing that same someone over. This is definitely the archetype Vin Diesel is best at, I think we can all agree. Well, this, or voicing characters with very minimal dialogue. But as much as I've talked positively about this movie, it's honestly just okay. It's pretty cliched and doesn't really make the most of its premise, but it's an enjoyable enough time, I'd say. And like I said earlier, it's probably the best movie in the series because the first sequel, The Chronicles of Riddick, is so out of left field, so bizarre, it's a completely different film. But the third movie, just called Riddick, is basically pitch black again. This franchise is weird. Especially since the games are so much better than the movies. Yes, The Chronicles of Riddick, Escape from Butcher Bay, and Assault on Dark Athena are excellent stealth first-person shooter games. Butcher Bay especially is a great time, one of the best games on the original Xbox. In fact, my copy of Pitch Black here even has an ad for Assault on Dark Athena. Be Riddick. Oh, I wanted to be Millard Fillmore. Well, that was a lot, but bottom line, Pitch Black is a fun, if somewhat underwhelming little sci-fi horror movie. It's a great turn by Vin Diesel, and it launched one of the most undefined franchises I have ever encountered. If you want to see how it all came to be, Pitch Black here is the starting point. Maybe give it a shot. And please, please play the video games. They may be older and currently unavailable on modern platforms, but they are so good. Trust me.